the Mirah structure. Each Mirah has a total of 162 beads. They are divided into the equator, what I call the equator. You could call it the middle or anything. And the equator has a total of 90 beads. And they are structured in terms of 18 rings of 6, interconnecting rings of 6. If you've made a right angle weave ladder, you'll have no trouble making a hexagonal ladder, which is what this could also be called. Okay, so that's 90 beads on the equator, in the equator. And then for each side, we add 36 more beads. And they form 18 rings of 5 beads each, right? It's pretty fast to make one of these structures, but you do have to follow. There are certain tricks that you need to follow, which I'll tell you. And on the other side, there are 36 beads structured in terms of 18 rings of 5 beads each, okay? So here's the basic structure that I've rendered in 6mm wood beads, plain wood beads. These are so great to learn on. You know, there's no loss. You don't have, it's not hard to cut apart. You know, and you could also number them if you wanted to, but for this structure, you don't need to. It's so straightforward. And it will turn out well if you follow my little tips, okay? And here is a Mirah in 3mm sterling beads, okay? Now, to me, it seems like this is heading towards kind of wanting to be circular instead of oval. And that tells me that it needs to be stitched a little more on the sides and in the interior. But we'll get to that later, you know? Spotting imperfections, we could call it. Or, you know, spotting things that we could slightly improve. So that's the basic structure. We've got the equator, and then we've got 2 sides. And then we've got the interior beads that have to be stitched around. Okay, pretty straightforward. And I'll see you in the next video. Stitching the equator. The equator starts as a ladder containing 17 rings with 6 beads each. Okay, so it starts out flat, and then we turn it into a circle by connecting the first and last rings. Okay, so 2 beads are already in place, one here and one here, and we're going to connect them with 2 beads on the top and 2 on the bottom. And at that point, the equator will be finished. Okay, so I'm using, for this video, I'm using 6mm wood beads, which are inexpensive and easy, a great way to learn. Nothing is at stake, you know, if you break them, you drop them, whatever. Or if you need to cut your structure apart because it isn't right, that's okay. So in the next video down, I will teach how to make them in 3mm sterling. But for those of you who don't yet know the basics, if you're a beginner, you might want to start here. Order some 6mm wood beads online. Maybe get colors. They come in fun colors too. 4mm wood beads will also work. All right, so let's get started. We are going to begin with 1 ring of 6 beads. And because these are just wood beads, and there's no big, you know, pressure to make a perfect structure, I'm just going to tie them, knot them together, like so. Okay, let me move this out of the way. Put these guys up here. And then I'm going to knot again, and knot again. And there, the first ring of 6 is in place. I'm going to make the tail a little bit shorter so it doesn't get in our way. I like to leave tails in place because they tell you where you began, and sometimes they really help you orient yourself. Now I'm going to reinforce this ring of 6 beads by going back through each bead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then going through a few more. Okay. It's generally best with your Mirahs to reinforce as you go. Reinforce your rings of 6 as you go. In other words, make one and then reinforce it. Okay. So we're going to call this bead the top bead, okay, in this first ring of 6. And now I'm going to add 5 beads. Which will finish forming the second ring, okay? Now, if you know this stuff, you can just skip to the next video or the video after that. This one is mostly for you beginners. All right, so we just added 5 beads, and now to close this ring, there's only one bead that we can go through that'll make this look like a nice tidy ring, and that's this one. So when in doubt, you can play the game called Ask the Beads. And Ask the Beads is you just position your beads as if you're going to go through a certain bead and see what they tell you. And very often they tell you the truth. You know, they guide you towards the correct bead. Actually, this structure is so simple that it's not hard to figure out which bead to go through. So I have created the second ring of 6, and now what I'm doing is I'm reinforcing it, okay? And then I'm navigating up through the ring to go through the top bead in the ring, which is this bead. Okay, and I promise you, before long, if you practice this, you'll be able to do it practically in your sleep, okay? So the first 2 rings are in place, so what are we gonna do? Add 5 more beads, right? We already know which bead we should go through. That's this one, so let's go through it. Okay, and now what are we going to do? We're going to reinforce the 3rd ring. Okay, you can flip it over to reinforce it if you want. Reinforce it by holding it in whatever position is comfortable for you. Now we're navigating back up and over. And you see I can add the next ring working left to right or right to left. Let me show you. So I can come out of the left side of this bead, circle around, go back through its right side like this, or I can flip it around. It's really the same thing, okay? Form it, go back through this bead, which is what I'll do this time. So we get the same result in the end. And so we've already added the first 4 rings of 6. Great. Okay, and now let's add the next one. I'm going to pick up 5 more beads. Oops, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, something happened here. I miscounted. And so I'm just going to take off 1 bead. All right, it happens. Now, I think I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, you know, it's always best to catch your mistake before you go too far past it, because sometimes it can be very hard to undo a mistake. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I'll take a minute and check them to make sure they're even. I want to make sure I didn't add too many or too few beads. And it's a good habit to get into. Once in a while, check yourself. See how you're doing. All right, coming up on ring 6 here. And for this, the videos in the Mirah, I took a radical step. I decided not to get a manicure. I decided to let you guys see, to show what my hands really look like. Because I'm a metalsmith too, right? I'm a jeweler, I'm a metalsmith. This is what they really look like. And to be honest, when I get a manicure, which I love, and I love pedicures too, they don't last that long, right? I mean, I'm lucky if I can get a solid day, even maybe a day and a half, out of a manicure, because my hands are so active. And I kind of made that decision a long time ago that I was okay not to have manicures, you know, and beautiful nails, fingernails, because I was doing other things. I was doing things with my hands. These are working hands, you know. But for dress up, I do love getting manicures. And pedicures, yes, I love them too. And they last longer, a lot longer, even for a jeweler like me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, I'm going to stop now and just double check that I have, do I have the right number of beads in each ring? Am I on track? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 already. And so how many more do we need? 9, is it? 2, 3, 4, 5. And each time I reinforce the ring, even though we're going to reinforce the equator more after it's finished. Navigate up. All right, I got 6, yeah. All right, let's check again. Yes, looking good. We're going to add 5 more. All right, now, so I'm all out of thread. And again, because I'm not worrying about making a perfect structure, I don't mind if my knots show. To be honest, I'm just going to knot around this thread several times, like 3 times, right? If you're using smaller beads, you probably already know what to do in this case. You just work your way around, go through quite a few beads, like I'm doing now, until the thread catches and you don't need to make a knot. Because if you're using really fine beads or you've got an important project going, generally you may not want to install a knot, okay? So keep working your thread down. Don't hesitate to catch the thread with your needle on the inside of a bead, okay? And there we go. That thread is not, it's not going anywhere, right? Okay. And then I'm kind of gonna do the same thing in reverse, adding on a new thread. I'm using a doubled length of Coats & Clark's hand quilting thread, as I often do. I'm gonna guess that the thread I'm using is about roughly 30 inches long. I'm going to form a knot down here. Again, I don't really care if the knot shows. This is just a learning project. You know, it's not going to be worn. It's not going to be shown off, or it's not going to be photographed even, right? All right, snip the tail. I'll leave it on. Just so I know where it is in case it should pull loose or something. All right, and I'm working my way back up through the structure so that I can get into position to go through the top bead in this ring, which is this one, right? Great. Now, how many rings we have in place? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we need 5 more rings. Should go pretty quickly. And then I'm going to show you how to connect the first and last rings of the equator, or the hexagonal ladder, we could be calling it, because it's a ladder of hexagonal rings containing 6 beads. Very regular structure, very symmetrical. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, that should be ring 13. 4 left. Okay. Reinforce it. Okay, well, let's check, make sure that all of our rings are even. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Only 2 more to add. 2, 3, 4, 5. Was that 16? Can't remember. We'll count after this one. There's 5. All right, let's count. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Perfect. Now we have come to the point, to the moment where we're going to join the 2 ends of this ladder, the 2 ends, excuse me, of the equator. And you know, we've been always starting from a top bead. So we're going to start from a top bead here, and we're going to connect through a top bead here, you know. So how to do that? Well, we're going to add 2 beads. This is how I do it. You may have other ways to do it. That's fine. This is the way I've learned, or I taught myself when I was a kid, so that I wouldn't make a mistake, right? If you do it like this, you know you're doing it correctly. All right, so I added 2 beads. Why did I add 2 again? Because we're trying to make a ring of 6 beads. This will be ring 18. 2 beads are already in place, 1 and 2. So I added 2 here, that makes 4. And if I add 2 more, that'll make 6 beads, okay? And I already know I'm going to go down through this bead because this is the top bead, right? So let's go here. Let's set it up. And this is what I used to do as a kid. Set it up so that you can't go wrong. As you get more advanced, you'll be able to do this, well, not just in your sleep, but holding it up, all right, in the air. And all you have to do now is pull. Okay, and you can see that ring 18 is in place. Ring 18, we know it's this one because it lives right next door to the original tail, right, that we started with. Now, all we're going to do is reinforce ring 18 once. So we know it's reasonably secure. All right, now this is our equator so far of 18 rings of 6 beads each. It's really floppy. See how floppy? I mean, this is an interesting structure. You could play with this and come up with something, I don't know what, symmetrical, asymmetrical, I don't know. There's a lot of potential just in this concept right here. So, you know, keep that at the back of your mind, right? That even being floppy, you could do something with this baby. But I really feel that it needs to be firm, not floppy, okay? In order to get us on the right path to finish our Mirah, it needs to be firm. Now, how are we going to get it firm? We're just going to keep reinforcing back through each ring, each ring, each ring. It's very meditative work. It's very peaceful work, okay? So let's get started. Doesn't matter which direction you go in, but I think it's a good idea to say, okay, I started with this tail here, right? And there's only one tail that looks like this tail. So I know that I have to keep reinforcing until I get back to that tail, right? So I'm going to go through each ring twice, right? And I'm going to try to mentally count. Keep in mind, which ring am I on again? Right, so I don't over reinforce one ring and under reinforce another, which is easy to do, you know, because the mind starts to drift. as we're working, and that's a good thing. The mind needs to relax, you know. The mind likes to relax, and it can do that in beadwork. All right, so I've gone back through twice around the beads in this ring. Now I'm going to navigate up and reinforce this ring. Twice. Okay. Okay, that one's done. Let's go to the next one. I'm going to go around this one twice, and then we're really going to have to tie off our thread because it's getting so short. I don't mind going really short in this case because I know I'm going to knot it. And you see, sometimes I go through one bead, sometimes two. It's kind of equal. It gets harder as the beads get smaller and the holes get smaller. All right, so now I'm going to reinforce. Excuse me, I'm tying off this one. See, I think I might have gone too short, but it's good for you to see, you know, so you see what happens. I'm going to snip this other tail so we don't ever confuse it for the main tail. Okay, the main tail tells us where we are, where we started. All right, that's a little bit sloppy. Now, you know, as I'm working, look what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a flaw. I'm seeing an error. I will not snip this off until later. Probably maybe even until the structure is finished. Can you see that there is a black thread that got looped around these two beads? It really shouldn't be there. I'm not going to cut it now because to cut it now would be to risk having our structure unravel. So I'm not going to do that. I'm noticing it and I'm leaving it in place for now. Later, we'll reinforce more around that error, the beads near that error. And then we're going to snip that thread right off. Okay, now I'm going to prepare more thread. I'm not measuring it. I just pull as much as I think I need. Thread the needle. I double it. You don't have to if you're working with a thick thread, or if you don't like doubling, you don't have to. I double because it's generally faster to reinforce, and I feel like it creates a stronger structure to begin with. All right, there we are. Snip this, and again, I know that I was right below this flaw. See, I'm going to lift this up. Can you see? It shouldn't be there. I know I was in the ring below that. That was my landmark. So I'm going to tie around one of the threads in the ring just below. Doesn't really matter where you tie back in, you know. Tie back in a little bit far away from where you want to end up doing your work. Now I'm going to trim this tail because I don't want to confuse myself as to which tail I began work with. All right, so I'm going to navigate up to this ring here. And did I already reinforce it twice? Maybe I did. It sure looks like I did from the amount of thread that's in there in the bead holes. So fine. I'm going to go right up to this problem ring here that has this ugly thread. I'm going to reinforce around it. I am kind of reinforcing in the misshapenness of this ring caused by this unsightly thread. You know, I could snip it now, but as I said, I'm going to wait a little while until the structure is more built, at which point we can easily cut this extra loop of thread and it won't matter. It won't cause our structure to come apart at all. All right, moving right along. We're in the next ring already. You know, sometimes, to be honest, I forget. Did I reinforce this twice or just once? And if I can't remember, you know, I tend to, okay, reinforce it once more, just for good measure. Okay. Nope. I think I pricked my thumb. All right. Now, I know that this is my tail thread down here. So I know I'm moving in this direction, being upward, you know, like this. Great, that's that one. And that's that one. And again, the reason we can go so fast right now is that we're using wooden beads that are large and they have big holes. And it's just very easy to work, right? When our beads get smaller, oh, look at that interesting loop. It's just like that last loop. Oh, I'm glad we caught it now instead of later. All right, so I guess we have to look out for our accidental loops here forming. Okay, good. There we go. All right, did I go around that one twice? I think I did. Sometimes you can kind of tell by how much thread is sitting between the beads. Yeah, I think I did. Okay. Yeah, I think I'll wax this thread again. Somewhat. Okay, where did we begin? This is where we began. So I'm going to say we're roughly, yeah, give or take, we're roughly halfway, right, through our reinforcing the first time, okay? Now this would make a fun project for a kid's birthday party. Of course, the kids would have to be fairly mature. You know, I don't know if they would have to be 10 years old or what. It would be fun. Give them some large beads. And obviously they have to be old enough that they're not going to try to swallow the beads. But, you know, this would be a great theme for a birthday party. if you haven't done it already. A kid's, even an, you know what, an adult's birthday party, a woman's birthday party. It's a lot of fun, as you know, when people get together and share their creativity and learn, and grow, and, you know, share a project. All right, that's good, that's good. All right, making progress. I think you can see that it's stiffer, right? The ring, the equator is stiffer now than it was before we began reinforcing. Interesting. Okay. All right, I'll go up here. Again, I can't remember if I did it twice, and it does feel loose, so, you know, I'm going to go back through it again. All right, there we go. Nice. Yeah, see, it's definitely getting stiffer. This is our original tail, so we don't have that much to go yet. Okay, I think we're back where we were. Oh, it seems like this guy needs some reinforcing. So great. Okay, so I'm going to knot this off right here. I'm not caring that the knot will show, because this is just a learner piece, and we can take certain liberties here. Great. Okay. So now the equator is done, but because these are wooden beads and the holes are so large, I'm going to sit here and reinforce each ring twice more, if not 3 times more. It's just too floppy, okay? In my world, the sign of a good ring, a well-made equator, is that it stands on its own. Like it'll hold its shape. You know how when you're whipping cream and the instructions say whip until stiff peaks form? Well, you know, it's kind of the same with the Mirah equator. Bead, reinforce until it stands up on its own. Okay, until it holds its shape. Kind of like an oval wheel will stand up on its own, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then I'll see you in the next video where we will work on the sides. Okay. Now at the end of the last video, I had mentioned that I was going to reinforce the equator a number of times because I was using wooden beads until I could get these wooden beads, get the equator to stand up on its own, okay, to be self-supporting, not to be rigid, but just to be self-supporting, okay? If you're using sterling silver beads, in my experience, 2mm sterling silver beads, to get your equator to be self-supporting is reinforcing once or twice, okay? Probably not more. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to stitch on the sides. Each side has 18 rings of 5 beads for a total of 36 added beads per side, okay? Now, the one thing that's probably the most important, these sides are easy to make, but we don't want to add one side and then tightly reinforce it, and then add the other side and tightly reinforce it. Why? I don't know. And I do know that it will produce a warped, weird structure, okay? So we're going to add one side and lightly reinforce it once. We're going to reinforce each ring as we're adding it lightly. We're not going to pull too hard. You also have the option of not reinforcing each ring. Just make the ring and move on to the next ring, okay? You don't have to reinforce each one because we will reinforce after both sides are made, after both sides are in place. That seems to be the secret, or one of the secrets, to getting a nice even shape, okay? So because we're using big wooden beads and we're not concerned about the aesthetics here, you know, I'm going to knot around, or knot the thread that lies between 2 beads. Any 2 beads, it doesn't really matter. If I were making this, you know, for a customer or to sell, to offer for sale, I would not form knots at all. I would just keep going through beads until the thread catches. But because these beads have large holes, that would take forever. So I'm going to leave the tail in place. You know, I might trim it. I'm using Kelly green thread. No particular reason, just for fun, to do something different. And we're going to get started here. I'm going to move away from the tail thread a few rings here, just to get away somewhat, some kind of distance from it, in case in the unlikely event that it decides to unravel. Now, as I said, each ring in the sides has 5 beads in it, right? For this ring, 2 are already in place. These 2 are in place. So we're going to add 3 beads. And we're going to go back down through this one. All of these steps are shown in your diagrams. You'll get to the point where this is just so easy that you really won't have to think. So I've added the first ring, and now I'm going to lightly reinforce it. I'm not going to pull real hard. I pulled fairly hard to create the ring. I'm not pulling real hard for the reinforcement. Just a little, okay? And now we're moving on to the second ring to get into position for the second ring. And you'll know, you probably already know this, 3 of the beads are already in place. 1, 2, 3. So to create a ring of 5, we're just going to add 2 beads. And the more you can learn how to do this intuitively, just knowing that you're going to add enough beads to create a ring of 5 beads. The more you can do that, the better off you are. And I think the more innovative you can be because you're learning principles, you know, the concepts behind the techniques. All right, so I reinforced that one once, not pulling real hard, because that will warp the structure. And I found that it's really hard to fix, right? If you stitch on the first side way too tightly, and you think you're going to have a nice even second side, well, it hasn't happened for me, you know? We want to make sure that our side will bend down like this, okay? It's got to be somewhat loose, as I mentioned. Have I gone through that one? I can't remember, honestly. Well, only once, okay? And I will go through it, reinforcing it lightly once. Pulling just enough that the ring stays together. Okay. If you're hearing little drops in the background, those are drops of snow or rain from outside, hitting the window pane, or hitting the window ledge, I think, because it's a snowy, slushy day here in Chicago, and some of those snowdrops are melting before they hit the ground. Okay, we'll keep going. It is kind of easy to catch the threads, so you want to be aware. Keep an eye out. Okay, next one. Uh-oh, see what I did? I wasn't thinking, and I added 3 beads, so now I have a ring of 6. So let's go ahead and undo this. I'm really glad that I caught it now while it's easily fixed, right? Instead of later when it requires a lot more effort. Okay, we're going to lightly reinforce. And you can see already the structure is kind of taking on a more curved shape, curving in the direction of the side that we're adding. And if we were stitching this really, really tightly, the curve would be really, really tight. And it would be incredibly hard to create the second side evenly, as tightly as the first side has been added. So you want to keep this a nice, easy curve here. Don't want it to be real sharp yet. It'll get sharp later when we stitch the interior beads, but not now. Okay, loosely reinforce. So I'd say we're about halfway, or maybe a little more, done with this side. It is going pretty quickly. It really isn't hard. The finesse comes in the reinforcing, where you have to have good reinforcing judgment, and you will. Okay, we're just about out of this thread. I have another thread ready to go, I think. Yeah, I do. I'm just going to really fast form a knot around the thread that sits between two beads. Again, this is not a real professional approach. It's something we do when we're just learning. Okay, I'm going to snip this off, I think, and then we'll see where we are. See, it's definitely taking on this beautiful oval shape, a firmer version of the shape, which, you know, it occurs to me, I'm sure it's occurred to you already, you could use as a bezel for a cabochon, right? Or some kind of stone or, you know, glass, flat back glass piece, right? So that's one possibility for a structure like this. And I'm going to stitch on the next thread. Rather, I'm going to knot it on, right? I'm taking the fast and easy approach here. Okay. And then I'm going to navigate up, maybe not to where I was, I think I was over here, but I'm going to navigate up to where I can begin the work again. And it doesn't matter where I begin the work again, right? You can go left to right, you can go right to left, you can go up, down. It doesn't matter as long as you're creating rings of 5 and very lightly reinforcing them, okay? You'll create a perfect side. So I'm actually working in the opposite direction now, and it's a good thing to learn. It makes you more fluent, not just in this structure, but in all the structures of this kind of class, right? To know that you can work in multiple directions, it's just liberating, you know? And it makes you a better beader because it gives you more options, you know, more technical options. Maybe it gives you more design options too, I'm not sure. Okay, and so we'll add 2 beads, create our next ring. Lightly reinforcing it, which is optional, as it says in the printed instructions. And I say here now, both ways are equally good. Lightly reinforcing as you create, or waiting until both sides are on to do any reinforcing. Interesting snag going on here. Okay, and watch for those too. And look, we're on the last ring. That's great. Only 1 bead has to be added because 4 beads are already in place. Now lightly reinforce. And I'm going to navigate to the opposite side so I can get into position to start creating the second side. Okay, so here I'm in position to start the second side, coming up between two beads. Let's check this out though. Isn't this beautiful? Can you see this as a cabochon? I can, definitely. I mean, you could do a lot more to it and with it and embellish it more, but that's like the basic structure. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to start the first ring on the second side, and we'll see how far we get here with this thread. Whoops, lost a bead. Okay. Lightly reinforce. Pull, but not real tight. All right, get into position to form the next ring. Straighten out this little snafu. Oops, another snafu. Okay. Lightly reinforce. So I'm just making sure that these rings of 5 are willing to bend down into position. I don't want them sticking out like this forever. We're going to bend them into position. And if we were reinforcing them really tightly, it'd be incredibly hard to get them to bend down. At least that's what I found, you know, with the wood beads and the sterling beads. And you see how the structure is starting to even out between the two sides? It's not really tightly curved here and loose here. It's becoming more well balanced, more even, and that's what we want. A beautiful even oval. think we can do one more ring before we run out of thread here. So I'm going to tie off this thread and then very quickly thread a new needle with more thread. It should have occurred to me, but it didn't. All right, an unsightly knot because it's just a sample and it's not going to be ready for prime time. It's just for us to learn. Here's what it looks like. It's getting more and more like it's supposed to look, okay? More like this, all right? So if you excuse me just a minute, I am going to as quickly as I can, thread another needle. And I tend to use pretty long lengths on my needles, long lengths of thread. I double them. I like them doubled. You know, as always, I'm using Coates and Clark's hand quilting thread, which, as I've said many times, was the only thread on the market that seemed like it would work for beads many years ago when I got started full-time, and that was like, it was actually January of 1988 is when I started full-time, and didn't know anything and had to develop a body of work. But I had my trusty hand quilting thread, which I would buy at a store called Vogue Fabrics in Evanston. Or I think it moved or it closed, I can't remember. Hand quilting thread worked every time. And of course, in the intervening years, so many more sophisticated threads, beading threads, have come on the market. And I like them. I like some of them better than others, but I still stick with hand quilting thread because it does what I want it to do. It doesn't stretch. They've improved the recipe so that for a while there, for a few years there, it wasn't all that good. It would break and knot and kink, and somehow they made it better. They must have gotten some feedback, and they made it better, back to where it used to be. And so I keep on using it. But you are welcome to use whatever thread feels good in your hands, whatever thread you're accustomed to. I waxed it fairly heavily for this, especially since I'm using wooden beads. I think I'm going to take a moment and wax it some more here. All right. Oops. All right, so where are we? We can go through these two right here. don't know what this is. I want to think. It can be fixed by, yeah, there. Well, mostly fixed. Okay. Okay, not far to go. Excuse me. Okay. Home stretch here. Okay, we are on the last ring of side 2, and all we need is 1 bead. So here we go. And I'll reinforce it lightly. And now I'm going to, excuse me, I'll probably leave the thread on to do some reinforcing, but I'm going to show you the reinforcing of the 2 sides in the next video, because I find that really long videos take a long time to upload. So I want to make them shorter. And maybe you guys like them shorter too. All right, quick overview. Here we have something that could possibly be adapted into a bracelet. I mean, it needs work. It needs refining. Who knows, maybe it needs to have 2 sides opened up and have snaps installed for a closure in some way. I don't know how, I haven't thought about it. But isn't this a beautiful, cool structure just the way it is? Okay, without being reinforced, without having the sides reinforced. You know, there are times when it seems to want to assume a circular shape instead of an oval, but we are going to persuade it in the next couple videos to stay as an oval. Okay, so we're going to do our reinforcing of the sides in the next video, and I'll see you in a few minutes.